Hey, Mike Healy here again, and welcome to the Cloud Investing Podcast. I am your host, and I am so excited for today's special guest, Mr. Darrell Wilson, Dr. Darrell Wilson. This is going to be a great podcast because he comes from a different perspective because he's been in the ministry for over 40 years, which is incredible. And a lot of people, sadly, a lot of people don't equate church and religion with business, but it's not about it because it takes money to fund the gospel, period, right? It is just a fact. That's the way it rolls. But we've become good friends over the last few years because we've both been dabbling in different projects, investment wise. One of which is the new project that we're going to talk about today, which is the data center stuff, to where you can actually, we found a group of people that allow us to buy units inside, like storage units. I guess you could call them, yeah, I guess you call them storage units inside these big data centers. And then as people use that and put their cloud hosting and their data on these, we get paid for it, which is absolutely amazing. So Darrell, before we just jump right into that, why don't you give us everybody, or give everybody on here kind of a brief overview who you are, kind of tell us your little about your background, and then I'll just start throwing some questions at you. Okay.
Okay, great, Mike. Hey, it's great to be on with you today. Briefly, I was born and raised here in the Dallas-Fort Metroplex. Went to North Texas State University, University of Texas at Arlington, as well as a professional musician for quite a few years, and a business marketing minor at UT Arlington here in Dallas-Fort Metroplex. And I pioneered a local church in the mid 80s in 1985. I've been doing that for the last 39 years. And we've been involved with various business opportunities. I've traveled internationally, been around the world over 43 times, if you want to look at it that way. And have been involved with various aspects of business and marketing, from direct sales in my earlier days with various companies, all the way down to some brick and mortar opportunities. So that's briefly who I am, Mike.
That's awesome. Okay, so we, I thanks for condensing 40 years of your life into about a minute, which is great. So Darrell, you and I actually met. We were introduced by a really successful business gentleman that is has his hands on all kinds of massive things, right? Just massive,
Yeah.
massive money, massive profit, things like that, and we looked at a crypto project that really appeared and does and has really developed into something amazing. And that's kind of how our relationship got started. Now, not to try to, we're not trying to sell anybody on this concept, but where you're at in your life right now, why would you, or what would you say to people that would maybe encourage them, if they're not investing in something, to start doing it now? Because time is running out as far as I'm concerned. I'm in my 50s now, and you know, things are definitely different than they were in my 40s, and they're way different 30s and so on. And now it's like I'm actually starting to, for the first time, have the reality of looking ahead with my life as to where I want to be in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, with my wife and I. And Darrell, what kind of, what would you tell people? Like, how would you, that kind of thing, whether it's a new person taking a listen, or, an old person that's been investing for a long time? Give us some of your tips here.
Well, Mike, over the last 30 years, I've seen massive paradigm shifts. If I was to call a name, one of the people who were part of a Shark Tank, we used to shop at the same clothing store in the garment district. And now that guy is a billionaire. And I remember during that time, he was talking about the internet. He was talking about the internet during that time. And it seemed so foreign to me. There were people, even that were a part of my church, they were experiencing internet and doing emails in our office because they were IBM employees. But all of a sudden, that trend came on and it just took off. That was in the mid 90s. And had I understood what was going on around me, I would have gotten involved. Well, in today's environment, everything has gone digital practically. And if you be an ostrich with your head stuck in the sand, you will miss out on one of the biggest and I like to say, quote unquote, mega trends that's happening. And that is to do with data centers, because data and AI, it's every place. And just being in ministry, still actively involved with multiple websites, all kind of data and content that we're creating, and more with AI. This is the next big paradigm shift that's already here upon us. It's not the future. The future is now, Mike, if I can say it that way.
Absolutely. And so let's just transition right into this, because this is what this podcast is about. So one thing I have seen, I've mentioned this on a few podcasts, and you can see it on the news, is data centers are exploding everywhere. And what data centers really are is, back in the day, and I actually did this on my last interview with Diane. Um, what's fun is, because she would really remember this, is she's old enough that everybody that had information, it was on paper,
Hmm.
and you had these massive file cabinets. And then once you filled up a full file cabinet, they took those things and stored them in like storage lockers, like literally physical locations, where you speed that process up to where we are advanced, a few years down the road. And now that same process is happening, except with digital stuff. And everybody talks about cloud and things like that. And it's not in a rain cloud, as a lot of people think. It's just digital stuff out there. But the data centers, like right up the street from me, my church is on a street that has probably close to $50 billion worth of data centers. Now it's 3 mile strip. Used to be just nothing but cornfields, and now everybody's taking it over. Google, Amazon, Facebook, they're all right there, right? So to me, it was a clue. And then so let's go to talking about this now, though. But what you and I are the most excited about is that we probably, in the current situation, you and I can't afford to build $1 billion data
No,
center and make the money that could potentially come in from $1 billion data center.
true.
We have figured out, through a kind of, I guess you could call it a conglomerate, a group of
Hmm.
people that are allowing us to come in and buy data centers for basically nothing compared to what is, so like a few thousand
True.
dollars. We're coming in and we're buying these data centers. And by having these data centers as cloud storage and data storage is going on them, we're getting paid from that. It's almost like renting a hotel. So we're,
Exactly.
we're digital landlords. When you heard this and you started to do a little due diligence on it, tell me what your thoughts were about where you're gonna what's gonna happen with this.
It was somewhat unbelievable, because being involved in the digital space, to be able to have access for literally, I would say, pennies on a dollar, and to be involved and to even store my own data, as well as make the opportunity available to others to get involved with this as a business. It was mind blowing to become a, as you use your term, a digital landlord in that respect. I've been involved with flipping houses before and things of that nature, and you have to have tenants, you have to have maintenance, you deal with all of that. And it ended up, when you put money in that, trying to preserve your time and exchange your money for more time, you end up spending sometimes time. Not knocking those that are still doing it, because real estate is still a booming thing. But here you can have digital real estate, and it's pretty much invest and just watch it grow. So it's an excellent opportunity, Mike, for just a few $1,000s.
Which is incredible because um as these things fill up, like even at like 10% capacity, when we buy these units, they're I guess you call it shelf life of these
Mhm.
is like between 5 and 7 years. So we pay like a few $1,000, like, some of the units, and I'll just throw some numbers out here. And by the way, my disclaimer here, and it was, we're not investment advisors. We're not giving investment advice. Always seek out a professional. I always have a ticker usually at the bottom of all my videos, this is just us having a conversation. Is we've noticed that the one first stage that we've been able to participate in is about a $15,000 purchase. And what we're doing is we're literally kind of co-owning a center, a unit with somebody. And then as this data gets filled on there, the potential payout on these things is pretty mind-boggling, because they're estimating that they could be paying out between $1,000 $4,000 a month
Wow, that's huge.
perpetually for 5 years. I
Mm.
mean, how does that make you, when you, because I want you to compare that with, because you said it, but just one more time with that comparing to real estate. Like what did it cost for you to buy a house? That you were maybe renting, and what kind
Mhm.
of profit did you make from the house, that kind of thing, and use those two comparisons because that's what we're already seeing people do that have been in that space. So tell us what you think about that.
Some are so when you're dollar cost averaging, you don't have near about the headache nor the responsibility to keep with all those different things. Dealing with subcontractors, or if you're doing the work yourself, there it is again. It's cutting into your time. Not to mention if you're buying houses on a cash basis, or whether you're financing them, you're dealing with other types of things too that's involved with that. Like the interest involved and things of that nature, materials, and that fluctuates as we've seen over the course of the last few years. I tell you, it's just a good, clean business to get involved with. That's pretty much low maintenance, and with what you would take to buy maybe one house, if you're going to do an 80/20, even in that respect, you can take that 20% and get multiple data centers that has a greater return, perhaps, than just having one house.
That's insane, isn't it?
It is
I
insane.
I was when I first heard about this, I was like, because you think, okay, $15,000, because what happens is a number gets in your head, but then when you start to look at the value of what I potentially have my hands on, I'm like, well, why would I take 30 grand and go buy a nice car, a decent car,
Exactly.
when I take 30 and do that, and I got an asset, but it's spending off cash it would pay for the car,
Exactly.
right? And potentially really pay it off pretty quick. And I still have the digital asset and that. I mean, I did hear that even after the life cycle of these things, that there's a potential that we can resell those probably smaller amount back to companies that are refurbishing, like companies that have massive data centers right now. Now, the one question came up, and we'll just kind of bounce this one off of
Mhm.
each other, is it all depends. Like the actual money that's being paid out is basically what we'd call the rental of the tenants that
Right.
are putting data on there. Based on what you have seen so far and your experience out there in the real world, do you think that the potential for data centers getting 10%, 50%, 100% capacity exists?
Oh yeah, the potential is there. I mean, the demand is there. With AI, this thing is on warp speed. It's like digital on steroids. So the demand is definitely there. And with this particular opportunity that we're involved with, it gives you a chance to be game level, par level with some of the biggest players with a minimal investment. Even from the standpoint of what's being offered presently, there's opportunities for others to get in where they fit in. If 15 grand is a big hunk for somebody presently, there's an opportunity that's at hand that I understand is not going to be lasting too much longer for early adapters that they can get in on and literally become a part of this and have it pay for itself while you're gaining access to this opportunity. They say the opportunity of a lifetime must be seized within the lifetime of the opportunity. And this is truly one that's at hand now. Like as I said before, the future is not uh, far off. It's now, and it's an opportunity that you can get in on, and there's a place where you can fit in on it.
Now, you said this way early when we just started the podcast about megatrends. Well, it's been amazing that somebody had brought this up, and when I first started doing due diligence, I went just on YouTube and typed in data centers, and then I saw all these news clips. First off, I saw a barrage of news clips of companies building data centers. But then there was a short one I saw, and there's been longer versions of it, of Mr. Wonderful Kevin Leary,
Oh yeah.
Kevin O'Leary, that was on one of those, I think it was like CNBC or MSNBC or
Hmm.
whatever it was, and he was just explaining that the companies that have a ton of commercial real estate that they would normally put office buildings on are now putting data centers
Wow.
on because they're like 100 times more profitable.
Hmm.
And to me, that's called a clue. Like I
It is.
literally, when you start to think about it, it's I just don't understand the mindset between people sometimes. Is it just people been so conditioned to think everything is a scam, or they just are stuck in their ruts. I mean, people like you got to take some risks
Yeah,
sometimes to go
definitely.
after. You know, you want to you got to risk it to get the biscuit. I remember hearing.
Mhm.
I think I heard Jimmy Fallon say that or somebody. But you know what I mean. Like what kind of? Let's talk about this for just a second. What kind of
Mhm.
mindset does somebody
Right.
have to have, or what would you tell somebody to do mindset wise or due diligence wise?
Well, in this respect, it reminds me of the story of the elephant that was staked down at the circus. And the elephant stayed in that position because of a routine. But when the snake was removed from the elephant's foot, the elephant still stayed there because he had been conditioned. And I think in the world that we live in, we've been conditioned to certain trends, and the future can pass us if we're not careful. It takes some renewing. From the standpoint of educating ourselves to what's going on around us. And with the internet now, news coming into us when it happens, there's no excuses for us to stay inside of our boxes, but to step outside of the box and take a little risk in those respects, because there are opportunities that are at hand that if you just are willing to get a little educated or get around someone that may be educating themselves as well as finding out what's going on, you can get in and know on that. If you're around four people that don't know what's going on, nine times out of 10, you will be the fifth one. So, exposing yourself to what's happening, taking a little risk, and analyzing where it is that you presently are and seeing where you desire to go, and getting with opportunities that can get you to your goals. And this is one of them.
I love that elephant analogy. That was great. I've heard it before, but I hadn't heard it in a long, long time. And man, does that sum up where we see people right now? Okay, shock statement. Quick question. You ever been broke before?
Oh, yeah. Been so broke I couldn't pay attention.
Okay. You have had money before?
I've had money before. Much better having money than being
Okay.
broke, I tell you that.
You tell me which one is more exhausting.
Being broke.
Because why? Because you have to put like every single decision you make is based on finance,
Exactly.
based on money. It's just exhausting.
So true.
And it's just sad to see so many people put up with the exhaustion of it. Like I'm not one of those guys that needs the big watches and the fancy clothes and stuff like that. To me, it's always been about the freedom.
Yes.
Like I have always tried to figure out ways. I don't care what it was. I don't care if it was just selling stuff online. I think my very first business was in sixth grade. I was selling those little lick-on tattoos that you would had, and I could buy them for a quarter, and I was selling them to kids at school for 75 cents. And I'd make my rounds, sell all my little tattoos. The business got shut down fairly soon after kids were coming home all tatted up and with their little stick-on tattoos, and the principal didn't want it anymore. But that was my first experience. But I realized that it was kind of cool to have some change, some coins in my pocket. And looking at that now, I mean, you've probably seen that because obviously being in the ministry, you've seen. Now,
Oh,
here's the
yeah.
thing, and let's switch this over real quick. Money's just money amplifies character, in my opinion.
Exactly.
If you're, and I say this with being blunt, that if somebody is a bad person or an idiot without money, they will be a larger idiot with a lot of money.
So true.
If they're a good person without money, you give somebody that kind of money, that's what changes the world. And people don't, I wish people would really start to understand that, because there's so many people, and you probably experience this, and we'll touch on some touchy
Mhm.
subject here.
Oh, that's good.
How many people have you run into that want to get their ministries going, and they just do nothing but say, well, God will provide. Well, God
Yeah.
will
Right.
provide. Well, God, okay, and trust me, I'm all in on God will provide. But why can't people truly understand that most of the time when God provides, it's direction on how to capture money in the marketplace? What do you
So
say?
true. So true. And the marketplace is one of the, I like to call it, seven mountains that God would have us to enter into. It has to do with business. There's the marketplace of business, there's education, there's media, and there's quote unquote church or religion. But my belief is that he gives us the power to get wealth or obtain wealth in order to establish the covenant in the earth. Now, it's all in the first chapter of the Bible. It says he created us in his image, which is his nature. his likeness, which is how he functions. He said what he wanted, and then he gave us dominion. But not only gave us that, he gave us every herb bearing seed for food to feed us. So, in that respect, he gave us those four things to prosper, but we must apply those principles in order for it to happen. One of my mentors would often quote that the richest place on the earth is the graveyard or the cemetery. There are ideas that were never executed. There are books that were never written. There are businesses that were never established because people would not be risk takers and utilize the power within that God has put in every man. And that's a spirit of leadership as well as the leadership spirit. So the spirit of leadership is that nature, that image, that likeness for us to function in that arena. And that's the spirit of leadership once we're functioning there. But ministries can be financed through ideas that he gives us, and we got to execute those. He made us in his image. God was a thinker. He thought, he spoke to himself and said, let us make man in our image. And so we have that opportunity and that responsibility to exercise that dominion or to dominate in our fields of endeavor, whether it's in any of those areas of profession, and business is one of them. So we can move into that business and that investor quadrant. And this gives us an opportunity to be in an investor quadrant to recapture our time so we can utilize it to make this world a better place, Mike.
Absolutely. That was perfect. That was awesome. And if you heard Darrell say something about the investor quadrant, that's coming from Robert Kiyosaki, which I know
Definitely.
we both studied. And he had the Rich Dad Poor Dad book series that just went viral globally. But then his second book was called the Cash Flow Quadrant, where you had the B, E, and I, S and I, B, S, and
Exactly.
I, right? I'm
Exactly.
sorry, E, S, B, and I. ES on the left hand side, B
Employee.
and I on the right hand side.
Mhm.
Bottom right corner is the investor part of it, of getting your money to go to work for you, because that's where what people don't really understand. And that's where people just, a lot of times, will just envy rich people. And, you'll never attract what you put down, by the way. Just a tip to anybody's listening in case somebody needed to hear that real quick. I mean, I've been there where you get to the point where you're jealous because you're struggling and so on. And I remember my pastor said that one time. He was like, he basically said that, right? And the morning before, when I drove to the church, I had to drive through this really affluent neighborhood every time I went to there. And we're talking, small shanty was a 1.5,
Mm.
one of those
Wow.
deals, big houses. And on the way back, I drove by and I'm like, man, I'm happy for that guy. I'm happy for that guy. I'm happy for that guy. And it kind of changed my perspective.
Exactly.
But we've got, even if it's not what we're doing, if the data is not for you, figure out ways to get your money multiplying, figure out ways to get leverage. And I think that's the
Leverage.
kind of cool part, because they said, I think wealth is created through growth and leverage, right?
That's true.
Whether it's money at work or people at work, you just have to figure out ways to leverage yourself, because leverage creates freedom.
Mhm.
And that's just, to me, that's the number one thing that I always shoot for, about this. And I really do, and I'm sure you'll probably agree, Darrell, and we'll kind of wind this down a little bit, is the next mega trend is absolutely the data center
True.
market. And why don't you give us some closing remarks on what you think, what you see, maybe predictions? Obviously, again, we're not giving financial advice and so on, maybe some things to keep an eye on. And then I'll close this out after that. Go ahead.
Data is here to stay. I went to the post office early this morning to return some packages for my wife, and the postal clerk there, he said, "Guy, you come here quite often doing this. How come your wife didn't do this? These are women's clothes." I said, "Well, I'm a little better at this than she is, and there are things that she's better at than I am." I said, "As a matter of fact, everything now is mostly click and order. It's no longer brick and mortar." And with that in mind, uh, I don't mind doing this for her in that respect. It saves me time for her to be there rather than going to sit in the shopping mall to be with her. But online is all of these selections and choices and Amazon. I'm getting something delivered from Amazon almost every other day. There's an Amazon package coming. Why? because data is here to stay. Amazon, Google, data is their thing. Amazon is one of the largest consumers of data presently. So here's an opportunity for us to get in on a new trend, have a paradigm shift, to be a part of what is now and prosper in the process. I stand on my theme scripture, Mike. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospers. And I've seen opportunities like with those cash flow quadrants. I remember my 40th birthday. Prior to it, I wanted a Corvette. I said Jesus rode a donkey that nobody ever drove, ever rode. I want a Corvette that nobody has ever drove. So I needed an idea for that. And I heard Robert Kiyosaki talking about that. And he was talking about storage centers, the storage centers where we
Yep, I
do
remember the
warehouses
story.
and whatever. But I bought rental properties, and our rental properties financed a Corvette for me. And I paid for a Corvette with rental properties. Well, here's another opportunity that don't just last, that I have to maintain all the time, or uh, put a big ticket in or a big investment in to get involved with, as large as like a real estate property, but a data center that will last from 3 to 5, perhaps even 7 years of passive income. So I just want to encourage those of you that are viewing this and listening to this today, that you would take advantage of that opportunity, because the opportunity of a lifetime must be seized within the lifetime of the opportunity. If I can say that again.
Absolutely. Great way to close us out. Thank you so much, Darrell, for being on here. That was
Been a
fantastic.
pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
I'm going to go solo real quick. You just stay right there.
Great.
Here's what I tell you right now is you just got to make choices. You got to make decisions. And I remember hearing, I believe it was Art Williams. He wrote a book that I was first book I really read out of school, because it was like, I think I was in my 20s when I finally read a book. And he said, all you can do is all you can do, but all you can do is enough, which was the book title. And he said, do today what others won't, and you will live tomorrow like others can't. So just start to think about that. And if you need information, reach out to Darrell about this. He's really, really great guy to work with. Really enjoyed his friendship over the years that we've been in touch with each other, as well as myself. But appreciate you on this one, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Thanks.